When I saw the plane take off without me, with my son and my daughter-in-law inside, I knew that this would be the moment they would remember for the rest of their lives. Not because of what I did, but because of what I chose not to do. For the first time in 65 years, I chose not to be a solution for anyone but myself. I was standing at the airport, my bag in my hand, watching the aircraft rise into the clouds. Robert must have been looking for me in the plane's aisle. Susan was probably already checking her phone, sending me texts that I wasn't going to answer. And there I was, still, feeling something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was simply the quiet understanding that my life belonged to me, and no one had the right to take it as if it were a free resource. It all started 3 months earlier, when Robert called me with that voice he always used when he needed something. That soft, affectionate voice that made my mother's heart melt before I could think clearly. "Mum, I have incredible news. Susan and I want to invite you to spend 2 weeks at the beach with us. A beautiful place, right on the ocean, so you can relax and we can enjoy some time together." I felt a warm glow in my chest. It had been so long since we spent quality time together. Since he married Susan, visits had become increasingly spaced out, colder, more functional. There was always a reason not to stay long. There was always something more important to do. But now he was inviting me for 2 whole weeks. 2 weeks to make up for lost time, to be the mum he needed again, to get to know Susan better, to build something like a real family. "Of course, my dear. I would love to go with you. Thank you for thinking of me." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then, that nervous laugh I knew so well. The laugh that appeared when he was about to ask me for something else. "Oh, Mum, I'm so glad you said yes. Because look, there's one small detail. We already bought our tickets, but we figured you could buy yours. You know, you have your retirement checks, and we're a little tight this month. But don't worry, it's a minor detail." A minor detail. $400 for a round-trip ticket, nearly half of my monthly retirement check. But it was my son. It was an opportunity to be close to him, to get back something I felt was lost. "It's all right, Robert. I'll take care of my ticket. No problem." "Perfect. Mum, you're the best. I'll send you the flight details so you can buy the same one as ours." I hung up the phone feeling a strange mix of happiness and worry. $400 was a lot of money for me, but it was worth it if I could spend time with my son, if I could feel that I was still important to him, that he still needed me. I bought the ticket that same afternoon. I used my credit card, knowing I would have to be more careful with expenses for the next 2 months to pay it off. But I was excited. 2 weeks at the beach with my family. 2 weeks to show that I was still useful, that I still had something to offer. 2 weeks later, Robert called again. "Mum, I need to ask you for one more little favor. The resort we're staying at has a special rate if we book 3 rooms together. Susan and I thought we could take advantage of it, but we need you to reserve your room too. It's just to secure the discount. You know how these things go." I didn't know how those things went, but I trusted my son. I always had. "How much is the room?" "It's cheap, Mum. Only $60 per night. And it's 15 nights, so that would be $900. But look, it's an investment. We're going to have an amazing time." $900, more than my total monthly retirement check. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I didn't want to say no. I didn't want to seem like the stingy mum, the one who ruins plans, the one who can't afford to enjoy time with her family. "Let me see what I can do, Robert. I'll confirm tomorrow." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling in my room, running numbers in my head. If I paid for the room, I would have to use the savings I kept for emergencies. That $1,200 I had put together over the years, saving $10 or $20 every month, denying myself small treats to have some security. But it was my son, and 2 weeks with him was worth more than any amount of money. The next day, I called him and told him to book the room in my name, that I would handle the payment. Robert sounded so happy, so grateful, that I felt I had made the right decision. "You're the best mum in the world. Seriously, I don't know what we would do without you." Those words filled my heart. I don't know what we would do without you. It meant he needed me, that I was still important, that my presence made a difference. A week before the trip, Susan called me. It was the first time she had contacted me directly since they announced the trip. Her voice was sweet, but there was something about it that made me nervous. Something I couldn't identify, but which made me feel small. "Laura, I need to talk to you about the trip. I want us all to be on the same page so everything goes perfectly." "Of course. Susan, tell me what you need." "Well, as you know, this trip is mainly for Robert and me to rest. We've had a very heavy year with work, and we need to disconnect. But we also thought it would be nice to have you there, to keep us company, and so you can help us with a few things." A few things? That little phrase that can mean so many things. What kind of things, Susan? "Oh, nothing major. Just simple things. For example, Robert and I want to sleep late, so it would be great if you could make breakfast. Nothing complicated, just coffee, fruit, eggs, whatever you can think of. And later, since we'll be at the beach all day, it would be perfect if you could take care of keeping the house tidy. You know, washing the dishes, making the beds, that sort of thing." I felt something cold run down my spine, but I still didn't want to believe what I was hearing. I was still clinging to the idea that this was a family trip, not a service I was meant to provide. "Susan, I thought we were going to enjoy ourselves together, that we would spend time on the beach, all of us, sharing meals." "Yes, of course, Laura. We're going to be together, of course. But you understand that at your age you probably won't want to be in the sun too long, right? Besides, we're younger. We need to take advantage. You can do those little tasks in the morning and then join us whenever you want. It's best for everyone." At my age, as if 65 years meant I could no longer enjoy the beach, the sun, the ocean, as if my only function was to serve others while they lived their lives. "All right, Susan. I'll do what I can." "Perfect. I knew I could count on you. Oh, and one more thing. Robert and I want to try out the restaurants in the area, but they're a little expensive. We thought maybe you could cook dinner. That way we save a little, and besides, your cooking is so good. Robert loves your food." So I wasn't just going to clean and tidy. I was also going to cook 3 meals a day, for 2 people who had full-time jobs while I lived on a retirement check that barely covered my own expenses. "Susan, cooking for 3 people every day for 2 weeks means buying a lot of groceries. That costs money." "Oh, Laura, don't worry about that. Just buy what's necessary, and we'll figure out how to organize the expenses later. We're family, right? Family doesn't keep track of things like that." Family doesn't keep track of things like that. But I had already paid for my ticket. I had already paid for my room. I had already spent more than $1,300 on a trip that was supposed to be an invitation, a gift, a time to be together. "Let me think about it. Susan, I'll confirm in a few days." "There's not much to think about, Laura. It's already decided. I just wanted you to know so you could be prepared. Bring comfortable clothes for being around the house. You won't need much beachwear." I hung up the phone with shaking hands. I sat down on the sofa in my living room, that old sofa I had bought when Robert was a child, and I started to cry. Not dramatic tears, but that silent weeping that comes when you understand something you didn't want to understand. This wasn't an invitation. It was an unpaid work contract. I wasn't the guest. I was the employee, the cook, the maid, and on top of that, the one who paid for the privilege of serving them. But I didn't say anything. I didn't call Robert to complain. I didn't confront Susan. I stayed silent, as I always had, because I was afraid. Afraid of causing problems. Afraid they would tell me I was overreacting. Afraid they would stop talking to me. That I would lose my son forever. So I started to prepare. I went to the grocery store and bought things I could take in my suitcase. Seasonings, spices, some canned goods, things that would help me cook without having to spend too much there. I spent another $100 on that shopping trip. I also went to the pharmacy and bought back pain medication because I knew that standing and cooking and cleaning all day would take its toll. Another $30. Every expense was like a small wound, but I told myself it was worth it. That at the end of the trip, Robert and Susan would realize everything I had done for them. That they would thank me. That they would value me. How naive I was. 3 days before the trip, Robert stopped by my house. He arrived with a huge smile. That boyish smile that always melted my heart. He hugged me tight and told me he was excited about the trip, that it was going to be incredible, that he had been waiting for a vacation like this for years. He didn't mention anything about the chores Susan had assigned me. He didn't ask if I was okay with everything. He only talked about himself, his plans, what he wanted to do. Mum, I need to ask you for one more favor. Could you lend us $300 for travel expenses? It's just that with so many expenses, we're a little short. We'll pay you back when we get back. I promise you. $300 more. I had already spent nearly $1,500. My bank account was practically empty. My savings had evaporated. But it was my son, my only son. The child I had raised alone after his father abandoned us. The child I had worked double shifts for years to give a good education. The child who was now a grown man with a steady job, but who kept coming to ask his retired mum for money. Robert, I've already spent so much on this trip. I don't know if I can give you any more. His expression changed. The smile disappeared. In its place appeared something cold, something that scared me. Then why did you say the trip was on if you weren't going to contribute? Susan and I were counting on you. Mum, I thought you wanted to spend time with us, but I see that money is more important to you than your own family. I felt like I had been punched, as if suddenly I was the villain in the story, the selfish mother who wouldn't help her son, the one who put money above love. It's not that, Robert. Of course I want to be with you. Give me a moment. I went to my room. I opened the drawer where I kept my last resort. An envelope with $400 that I had saved for a real emergency. Money that had taken me years to save. Money that represented months of deprivation. Of not buying new clothes. Of not going to the doctor when I should. Of eating less so I could save more. I took $300 from the envelope and gave it to him. Robert hugged me again. He kissed me on the forehead and told me I was the best mum in the world. When he left, I stood in the doorway, watching his car drive away. And for the first time, I felt something different. It wasn't unconditional love. It wasn't maternal pride. It was something akin to weariness, to disappointment, to the profound sadness of understanding that perhaps my son didn't see me as his mother, but as a resource from which to extract what he needed. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, reviewing every moment of the last few months, every call, every request, every promise that this would be different, that we would finally spend quality time together. And then I saw the pattern. It wasn't the first time. It had never been the first time. I remembered when Robert turned 30 and asked to borrow $2,000 for the down payment on his car. He promised he would pay me back in 6 months. 5 years had passed. I never saw that money back. I remembered when he married Susan and asked me to pay for the wedding dress because they were saving for the honeymoon. $3,000 that came from selling some jewelry my mother had left me. Jewelry that had sentimental value, not just monetary. I remembered every birthday, every Christmas, every special occasion where I arrived with gifts and they arrived empty-handed, saying they were going through a tough time, that they would make it up to me later. I remembered the times they called me only when they needed something. Money, help cleaning their house, to watch their dog when they went on trips, to cook for a dinner party they were hosting for their friends. And I remembered how every time I hinted that I was tired, that I needed a break, that I also had my own needs, Robert would look at me with those sad eyes and say, "Mum, I thought I could count on you. You're the only family I have." Guilt. Always guilt. The perfect weapon to keep me in line, to keep me giving without receiving anything in return. I got out of bed and went to the kitchen. I made a cup of herbal tea, the kind that always calmed me when anxiety tightened my chest. I sat at the table and pulled out an old notebook where I used to track my expenses. I started writing. Every dollar I had spent over the last 5 years on things related to Robert and Susan. Not birthday or Christmas presents, those didn't count. Only the things they had borrowed, the financial aid, the favors that ended up costing me money. When I finished adding it up, the number took my breath away. $18,000, nearly 3 years of my full retirement income. Money I would never see back. Money I could have used to fix up my house, to travel alone, to have a more comfortable old age. But it wasn't just the money. It was the time. The hours I had spent cleaning their house while they went out with friends. The weekends I had sacrificed to care for their things while they enjoyed themselves. The times I had cancelled my own plans because they needed me. And never, not once, had they asked me what I needed, what I dreamed of, what I wanted to do with my life. For them, I was an extension of their comfort, an always available resource, a mother who existed solely to solve their problems and make their lives easier. I closed the notebook and put it away. I wasn't going to show those numbers to anyone. I wasn't going to complain, because I had understood something important. No matter how many times I showed them the reality, they weren't going to change. Not because they were bad people, but because it benefited them for me to remain who I was. The mum who always says yes, the one who always finds a way, the one who never complains. 2 days before the trip, Susan sent me a text. It was long, detailed, a complete list of everything I needed to do during the vacation. "Laura, so you can be organized, I'm sending you the schedule. Breakfast at 9 o'clock in the morning, nothing too elaborate, but something substantial. Then clean the kitchen and the bathrooms. Make the beds before 11, because that's when we're leaving for the beach. Have lunch ready at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something light but filling. In the afternoon, while we rest, you can do the laundry and ironing. Dinner should be ready by 8 o'clock in the evening. Robert prefers hot food for dinner, no cold salads. After dinner, clean up everything and leave the kitchen spotless. Oh, and on the weekends we can do something together, if you're not too tired." I read the message 3 times. Each time I felt something inside me harden a little more. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. The clarity of seeing exactly what was happening, without the filters of maternal love, without the excuses I had been giving myself. This wasn't an invitation. It was a list of obligations for a housekeeper, with the difference that a housekeeper got paid for her work and had days off. I, on the other hand, had paid for the privilege of working for them. I didn't answer the message. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling something inside me begin to change. It wasn't a decision yet. It was just a crack in the armor of self-denial that I had built over my entire life. That night, my neighbor, Mary, came over for coffee. We had been friends for 30 years. She knew me better than anyone. She had been there during the most difficult moments of my life. "You look worried, Laura. What's wrong?" I told her everything. The trip, the expenses, the to-do list, the money I had loaned and never got back. I spoke for an hour, non-stop, letting out everything I had kept bottled up for months, for years. Mary listened in silence. When I finished, she took my hand and looked me straight in the eye. "Laura, do you want to go on this trip?" The question took me by surprise. No one had asked me that. Not Robert, not Susan, not even myself. "I don't know. He's my son. I can't say no to him." "You can't, or you don't want to deal with what happens if you say no?" That question hit me hard, because she was right. It wasn't that I couldn't say no. It was that I was afraid of the consequences, afraid Robert would get angry, afraid they would stop talking to me, afraid of being completely alone. "I'm scared, Mary. They're the only family I have left." She squeezed my hand tightly. "A family that only seeks you out when they need something isn't family, Laura. It's a relationship of convenience. And you deserve more than that. You deserve respect. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not for what you can give them." Her words stayed with me that night. I fell asleep thinking about them. I woke up with them echoing in my head. You deserve respect. You deserve to be valued. The day before the trip, I went to the bank. I withdrew the last $100 I had in the account. I put them in my wallet and looked at them for a long time. That was all my liquid money until next month. I had no more savings. I had no safety net. If any emergency happened during the next few weeks, I would be completely unprotected. And all for a trip where I wasn't going to rest, where I wasn't going to enjoy myself, where I was only going to serve two people who had apparently forgotten that I, too, was a human being with needs and limits. That afternoon, I packed my suitcase. I put in comfortable clothes, as Susan had instructed. Old clothes that I wouldn't mind getting dirty while cooking and cleaning. I didn't pack fancy swimsuits or nice dresses. What for? I wasn't going to the beach. I wasn't going out to dinner. I was going to be cooped up in a house, working. As I folded the last shirt, my phone rang. It was Robert. "Mum, we'll pick you up at 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. The flight leaves at 7 and we can't be late. I hope you're ready." "I'll be ready, Robert." "Perfect. Oh, and Susan reminded me to tell you to bring your credit card, just in case we need to buy something there and don't have cash. You know, for groceries and that sort of thing." For groceries? For the food I was going to cook? For cleaning the house they were going to mess up? For everything they needed and that I was supposed to provide? "All right, Robert. Great. See you tomorrow morning. Get some rest." I hung up the phone and sat on the edge of my bed. My suitcase was ready. My passport was in my bag. Everything was prepared for this trip that was supposed to be wonderful. But I didn't feel excitement. I didn't feel joy. I only felt an enormous weight in my chest, as if I were about to walk into something dark and irreversible. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the shadows on the ceiling, listening to the silence of my house. This house that had been my sanctuary for so many years. This space where no one asked me for anything, where I could simply be Laura, without roles or obligations. And I thought about the next 2 weeks. Waking up early every day to make breakfast. Cleaning bathrooms I hadn't dirtied. Washing clothes that weren't mine. Cooking meals for people who never asked what I wanted to eat. spending my days serving while they enjoyed the sun and the ocean. All that after having spent nearly $1,800, after having emptied my savings, after having sacrificed my financial security. And at the end of the trip, I would probably receive a quick thanks, maybe a hurried hug, and then weeks or months without hearing from them until they needed something else. I got out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. There was no point in trying to sleep anymore. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. I sat at the table where I had so often had breakfast alone, where I had planned my life, where I had cried my sorrows and celebrated my small victories. And in that moment, in the silence of the pre-dawn, something inside me finally broke. Not with noise or drama. It was silent, like when an old branch finally snaps after holding too much weight for too long. I understood that if I got on that plane, if I went on that trip, I would be confirming something terrible. That it was okay to treat me like that. That it was acceptable to use me. That my value as a person was measured solely by what I could do for others. And I understood something even more important. That no one was going to defend me. No one was going to say this was wrong. No one was going to set limits for me. If I didn't defend myself, no one else would. I took my phone and looked at the list Susan had sent me. I read it one more time. Every line, every task, every expectation. And this time, instead of feeling obligation, I felt something different. I felt indignation. I felt that I deserved better. I felt that my life, my days, my time were worth more than this. I wasn't going. The decision arrived just like that, simple and clear. I wasn't getting on that plane. I wasn't going to spend 2 weeks being treated like a housekeeper. I wasn't going to keep allowing my son and daughter-in-law to see me as a free resource. But I wasn't going to tell them. I wasn't going to call to cancel. I wasn't going to give explanations or get into arguments, because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. Robert would tell me I was overreacting. Susan would make me feel guilty. They would convince me I was being selfish, that I was ruining their vacation, that I was a bad mother. No. This time there would be no discussion. This time I simply wasn't going to show up. At 5 o'clock on the dot, the doorbell rang. I peered out the window and saw Robert's car parked in front of my house. He was in the driver's seat. Susan was checking her phone in the passenger seat. The doorbell rang again, then again. I heard Robert's voice calling me. "Mom, we're here. Hurry up. We're going to be late." I stayed still, without opening the door. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was something else. It was determination. After 5 minutes, I heard Robert talking on the phone. He was calling me. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. "Mom, where are you? Open the door. We have to go now." I still didn't move. I heard his steps approaching my bedroom window. I heard him tapping on the glass. "Mum, this isn't funny. Open up now or we're going to miss the flight." Susan also got out of the car. I heard her voice, annoyed, impatient. "Robert, call someone. Get a neighbor with a key. We can't miss this flight." But no one had a key to my house. And even if they had, I had locked the deadbolt from the inside. They couldn't get in. 20 minutes passed. I heard them arguing outside. I heard Robert call me again and again. I heard Susan say that this was ridiculous, that I was being childish, that clearly I didn't want to go, and that they should just leave without me. Finally, I heard the car engine start. I heard them drive away, probably furious, probably confused, but definitely without me. I stayed sitting in my living room for another hour, not moving, barely breathing, processing what I had just done. I had said no, without saying a single word. I had set a boundary. For the first time in my life, I had chosen my peace over pleasing my son. I got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen. I made more coffee, this time without rushing, savouring every movement. I opened the window and let the cool morning air in. It was barely 6 o'clock and 12 minutes. By now, I should have been at the airport, loading luggage, taking orders from Susan about what to do and what not to do. Instead, I was in my house, in my space, in peace. My phone started ringing again. It was Robert. I didn't answer. He called again, and again, and again. I let all the calls go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to him. I wasn't ready to hear his complaints, his anger, his attempts to make me feel guilty. I needed this silence. I needed this moment of calm before the storm that I knew would come. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the phone stopped ringing. I guessed they were already on the plane, probably sitting in their seats, still processing what had happened. I imagined Robert's face, confused and annoyed. I imagined Susan, furious, complaining that I had ruined everything, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't care what they thought of me. I served myself breakfast, scrambled eggs with tomato, toast, orange juice. A simple breakfast, but made calmly, without the pressure of having to serve anyone else. I sat at my table and ate slowly, looking out the window, watching the neighborhood wake up. The lady across the street was taking out the trash. The young man on the corner was going for a run with his dog. Life was following its normal course, oblivious to the small act of rebellion I had just committed. After breakfast, I washed the dishes. My dishes, my cup, my silverware. No one else had messed anything up. No one had left their mess for me to clean. And I felt something strange, gratitude for this simple household chore that I was doing just for myself. Then I took a long bath. One of those baths I normally rushed to finish because there was always something else to do, someone else who needed something. I stayed under the hot water until it started to cool, feeling the tension of the last few months going down the drain. When I got out, I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 65-year-old woman with wrinkles around her eyes, with grey hairs that I had stopped colouring years ago because the dye was expensive and there were more important things to spend money on. I saw a tired woman, but I also saw something else. I saw someone who had just done something brave. I dressed in comfortable clothes and sat on the sofa with a book I had bought months ago but never had time to read. And I read, for hours, without interruptions, without guilt, without the feeling that I should be doing something more productive. It was almost noon when the phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but I answered. "Mrs. Miller?" "Yes, this is she." "I'm calling from the Seaside Paradise Hotel. We have a problem with the reservation under your son's name, Robert Miller." I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew what was coming. "What kind of problem?" "Well, when your family members arrived, they tried to check in, but the card they presented was declined. They told us that you would be making the payment for all 3 rooms, but we don't see you anywhere. Without payment, we can't give them the keys." "I understand. Can you put me through to my son, please?" There was a moment of silence. Then I heard Robert's voice. It sounded different. It was no longer the calm, sweet voice he used when asking for things. It was desperate, almost pleading. "Mum, what happened? Why didn't you come? We're here at the hotel, and they won't give us the rooms without your card. Susan is furious. This is a disaster." I took a deep breath before answering. "Robert, I'm not going on that trip." "What do you mean you're not going? We're already here. You missed the flight. What are we supposed to do now?" "I didn't miss the flight, Robert. I decided not to go." I heard a long silence on the other end, then his voice, now annoyed. You decided not to go? Are you kidding me? Do you know the trouble you caused us? Do you know how embarrassed we were at the airport looking for you? We thought something had happened to you. I stayed silent. I let his words fill the space. I let him realize the absurdity of what he was saying. He hadn't thought something bad had happened to me. He had thought it was an inconvenience for him. Mum, we need you to come, or at least give your card number to the hotel so we can get into the rooms. We can't stay on the street. I'm not giving my card, Robert. What? Why not? It's just to guarantee the rooms. We'll figure out how to organize the payments later. We'll figure it out later. The same old words, the empty promises that were never kept. Robert, I spent $1,800 on this trip, money I didn't have. I emptied my savings, and all to go cook, clean, and serve for 2 weeks. It wasn't an invitation, it was a job. And on top of that, a job I was paying for the privilege of doing. Mum, it's not like that. We wanted you to come so we could spend time together. Spend time together? Susan sent me a list, Robert. A complete list of all the chores I was supposed to do. Breakfast at 9, clean bathrooms, make beds, prepare lunch, do laundry, ironing, cook dinner. That's not an invitation to a vacation. That's a work schedule. I heard his heavy breathing. I knew he couldn't deny what I was saying because it was true. Everything was true. Well, maybe Susan got a little carried away, but you know how she is. She just wanted everything to be organized. Got a little carried away. As if asking someone to work as a housekeeper for 2 weeks after paying $1,800 was merely a little excessive. Robert, I need you to understand something. I am not going to continue being your solution for everything. I am not going to continue lending you money that you never pay back. I am not going to continue sacrificing my life for your convenience. His voice changed again. Now it sounded hurt, victimized. I can't believe you're doing this. Mum, after everything we've shared, I thought I could count on you. You're my mother. And there it was, the magic phrase. You're my mother. As if that meant I had no right to have boundaries, to say no, to protect my own peace. Yes, Robert, I am your mother, but I am also a person, and I deserve respect. So you're going to leave us stranded here, with no money, with no rooms, with nothing. You have jobs, you have income, you have credit cards. You can solve this. We don't have enough on our cards. That's why we were counting on you. Then maybe you shouldn't have planned a trip you couldn't afford. There was another long silence. I heard voices in the background. Susan was saying something, but I couldn't make out what. All right, Mum, I get it. You don't want to help us. Let's hope that when you need something, there will be someone willing to help you, because clearly we can't count on you. And he hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to call him back, apologize, find a solution. That part that had been trained for 65 years to put the needs of others before my own. But there was another part, a stronger one, that knew I had done the right thing, that understood that if I gave in now, everything would go back to the way it was. Worse still, it would confirm that they could treat me however they wanted, and I would always be there, absorbing the abuse, paying for the privilege of being used. I didn't call back. Over the next few hours, I received several messages, first from Robert, then from Susan. Robert's messages tried to appeal to my emotions. Susan's were directly accusatory, full of reproaches about how selfish I was, about how I had ruined their vacation, about how a real mother would never do something like this. I didn't respond to any of them. In the middle of the afternoon, Mary came to visit me. She had seen Robert's car early in the morning and wanted to know what had happened. I told her everything. How I hadn't opened the door. How they had left without me. How they had called me from the hotel. The conversation with Robert. Susan's messages. Mary hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, Laura. I know it was hard, but you did the right thing. I feel terrible, Mary. He's my son. I left him stranded there with no help. She took me by the shoulders and looked me squarely in the eyes. He's a grown man with a job and a wife. You didn't leave him with no help. You stopped being his easy solution. There's a big difference. Those words gave me some comfort, but I still felt a weight in my chest. The guilt didn't go away that easily. I had been programmed my whole life to feel responsible for my son's well-being. That night, I prepared a simple dinner for myself. Pasta with tomato sauce, salad, a glass of wine that I had saved for special occasions. And I decided that this was a special occasion. The day I had finally chosen myself. I ate in silence, savoring every bite, thinking about Robert and Susan, probably still at the airport or looking for a cheaper hotel. Part of me worried. But another part, the part that was emerging after years of being dormant, understood that this had to happen. The next 3 days were strange, silent. My phone kept receiving messages, but they became less frequent. Robert had stopped writing after that first day. Susan kept sending occasional messages, but I wouldn't know. I could see the first lines in the notifications. They always started with accusations, with reproaches, with attempts to make me feel like the worst person in the world. But something had changed in me. Every message I didn't answer was like a small victory. Every day that passed without seeding was a confirmation that I could live without their approval. Mary came over every afternoon for coffee. She brought me cinnamon rolls from the bakery, and we would sit and talk for hours. She told me stories about her family, about her own struggles with her adult children, about how she, too, had had to learn to set limits. One day she told me something that stuck with me. Laura, true love doesn't ask you to destroy yourself to hold up others. True love is built on mutual respect, not unilateral sacrifice. Those words helped me hold firm when guilt threatened to flood me. On the 4th day, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. This time it was the hotel again. Mrs. Miller, I apologize for bothering you again. Your son and daughter-in-law managed to get a room here, but there are some additional charges that are pending. Meals at the hotel restaurant, minibar use, laundry services. They gave us your number as an emergency contact for payment. What's the total? $2,300. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. $2,300. After all, after I had told them no, after I had set boundaries, they were still trying to use my name, my credit, my money. I am not going to pay those charges. My son and his wife are responsible adults. They used those services. They must pay for them. But, Mum, they told us you would take care of it. They lied. I am not there. I did not authorize any charge, and I am not paying anything. I understand. Then I will have to speak directly with them about this. Please do. And I also ask you to remove my name from any document related to their stay. I am not responsible for their expenses. I hung up the phone with shaking hands, not from fear, but from indignation. They had had the nerve to continue using my name, to continue trying to charge their expenses to me, even after everything that had happened. 5 minutes later, my phone exploded with calls from Robert. This time I did answer. I needed to say what I had to say. How dare you embarrass us with the hotel? They told us you refused to pay. Do you know the shame we went through? Robert, you didn't leave me any other option. You used services you couldn't pay for and put my name down as responsible without my permission. We thought you were going to help us. You always help us. I always helped you, Robert. Past tense. Not anymore. Then what are we supposed to do? How are we going to pay this? Robert, you earn more than double what I receive in retirement checks. Susan also works. You have income. I live on $600 a month. And you asked me to spend $1,800 plus another $300 in cash, plus what I would have spent on food already. That's more than 3 months of my entire income. Does that seem fair to you? Silence on the other end. Mum, we have expenses. Rent, the car, credit cards. I have expenses too, Robert. Food, medicine, utilities. And unlike you, I don't have the option of working more hours or asking for a raise. My retirement check is fixed. This is all I have. It's not the same. You're right. It's not the same. Because you have options and I don't. And yet I was the one who always sacrificed everything. I heard his heavy breathing. Then Susan's voice in the background, annoyed, demanding to know what was happening. Susan wants to talk to you. I don't want to talk to Susan. But before I could say anything else, I heard my daughter-in-law's voice on the phone. Laura, this is ridiculous. You promised us you were coming, that you were going to help. We made plans counting on you. And now you leave us here, humiliated, unable to pay the bills. What kind of mother does that? A mother who is tired of being treated like a servant. A mother who realized that her son and daughter-in-law only seek her out when they need money or free services. We don't see you like that. You're part of the family. If I were part of the family, you would have invited me to enjoy the vacation, not to work for 2 weeks. If I were part of the family, you wouldn't have sent me a list of chores as if I were your maid. If I were part of the family, you would ask me once in a while what I need, what I want, how I am. Susan made a sound of frustration. You're so dramatic. We just asked you to help a little. It's not a big deal. I paid $1,800, Susan. I loaned you $300 more. And you expected me to cook 3 meals a day, clean, do laundry, iron, all while you enjoyed the beach. And you say it's not a big deal. Well, if it bothered you so much, you should have said so from the beginning. I did say it, in the only way you were going to understand, by not going. This is pure selfishness, Laura. But fine. Now we know we can't count on you. That the moment we needed you most, you turned your back on us. Susan, the moment you needed me most was not for a luxury vacation you couldn't afford. It was every time I needed emotional support and didn't receive it. It was every time I needed the loaned money back and you never paid it. It was every time I needed to feel valued as a person and you only made me feel useful as a resource. And I hung up. I sat on the sofa, my heart pounding. My hands were still shaking, but this time it wasn't from anxiety. It was from adrenaline, from power, from the feeling of finally having said everything I had held back for years. I couldn't sleep much that night, not out of guilt, but because of the intensity of everything I was feeling. It was as if I had opened a floodgate, and now everything was coming out. Years of frustrations, of silences, of swallowing words to keep the peace. The next morning, I received a message from Robert. It was long, different from the others. Mum, I need to talk. Truly, without Susan. Without fighting. Just you and me. Please. It was the first time he sounded genuinely willing to listen. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed more time. I needed to be sure that I wouldn't give in at the first sign of superficial regret. I replied, "Robert, I need time. When I'm ready to talk, I will reach out to you. For now, I need you to respect my space." He didn't respond immediately. Several hours passed before his message arrived. "All right, I'll wait for you." The following days were about discovery. I discovered that I could spend entire days without talking to anyone and not feel lonely. I discovered that I enjoyed my own company more than I thought. I discovered that I had interests and hobbies that I had given up years ago because I was always busy solving other people's problems. I started painting again. I had taken watercolor classes 10 years ago, but I stopped when Robert started needing more financial help, and I could no longer afford the materials. Now, with the money I normally would have spent on that trip, I bought new brushes, paper, paints, and I spent the afternoons in my small yard, painting flowers, landscapes, anything that inspired me. Mary encouraged me to join a neighborhood women's group that met on Thursdays for crafts and conversation. At first, I resisted. I wasn't used to seeking company outside of my family, but I finally accepted. Those women, all older like me, had similar stories. Children who sought them out only when they needed something. Families who took their availability for granted. Some were still trapped in that cycle. Others, like me, were learning to get out. One of them, Evelyn, told me something that impacted me. "Laura, the problem isn't that we love too much. The problem is that we've been taught that loving means disappearing, and that's not love, that's self-destruction." A week passed, then two. Robert's messages became less frequent. They were no longer demanding or accusatory. They were more reflective, more measured. Short messages where he told me how they were, without asking for anything, without expecting me to solve their problems. Susan, on the other hand, had stopped writing completely. And honestly, that gave me peace. 3 weeks after the failed trip, Robert showed up at my door. He didn't call beforehand. He didn't give notice. He just rang the doorbell one Saturday afternoon. When I opened it and saw him standing there, with a bag of cinnamon rolls in his hand and an expression I hadn't seen in years, I felt something move in my chest. It wasn't the automatic urge to hug him and forgive everything. It was something more cautious, more conscious. "Hi, Mum. Can I come in?" I hesitated for a moment. Part of me wanted to close the door, to maintain the distance that had cost me so much to build. But another part, the part that still loved him despite everything, needed to hear what he had to say. "Go ahead." We went into the living room. He sat on the same sofa where he had sat so many times, but this time there was something different in his posture. It wasn't the casual confidence of someone who knows they are welcome. It was the discomfort of someone who understands that they have lost something important. "I brought your favorite pastry, the cinnamon one from the corner bakery." "Thank you." I placed the pastry on the table without touching it. I wasn't going to make coffee. I wasn't going to create that cozy atmosphere that I always created when he came over. This time, if he wanted to talk, we would have to do it without the family rituals that softened everything. Robert cleared his throat. "Mum, I came to talk. Truly. No excuses. No trying to convince you of anything. I just want you to listen to me." "I'm listening." He took a deep breath. I saw his hands trembling slightly. It was strange to see him nervous. He had always been so sure of himself, so confident that I would be there no matter what. The trip was a disaster. Susan and I spent the first 3 days fighting. We had to borrow money from her parents to pay for the hotel. It was humiliating. And all the time I was furious with you. I thought you had betrayed us, that you had been selfish, that you had embarrassed us. He paused. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, waiting. But later, when the anger passed, I started to think, to remember. All the money I had borrowed from you and never paid back. All the times I showed up only when I needed something. And then Susan showed me the list she had sent you, the list of chores for the trip. His voice cracked a little. Mum, when I read it calmly, when I really saw it, I felt sick. It wasn't an invitation. It was a work contract. And you had paid $1,800 for the privilege of being our employee for 2 weeks. Tears started rolling down his cheeks. I stood firm, without moving to comfort him. I needed him to feel this. I needed the discomfort to force him to continue being honest. I don't know when I became this person, Mum. Someone who treats his own mother like a resource. Someone who takes your love, your time, your money for granted. Susan and I had some very difficult conversations these past few days. She also realized how badly we treated you. Susan realized, or you told her to realize. He looked at me surprised. What do you mean? Robert, I need to know if Susan truly understands what you both did, or if she's just following your script, because you need me to go back to the way I was. No, Mum. She understands. In fact, she was the one who suggested I come alone. She said I needed to talk to you first, son to mother, without intermediaries. That surprised me. Maybe Susan had reflected, or maybe it was just strategy. It was still hard to know. Robert, do you know how much money I've loaned you in the last 5 years? He shook his head. $18,000. Money you never paid back. Money that came from my saving, my retirement checks, the sale of things that had sentimental value to me. His face paled. I didn't know it was that much. It is that much. And it's not just the money, Robert. It's the time. It's the weekends I spent cleaning your house while you and Susan went out with friends, and it's the dinners I cooked for your guests while they treated me as if I were invisible. It's all the times I cancelled my own plans because you needed something. I know, Mum, and I have no excuses. I'm not looking for excuses. I'm looking to understand if you truly grasp what happened, or if you're only here because your life became more difficult without me. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. Both things, if I'm honest. Yes, my life is more difficult without you. But I also realized something worse. I realized that I never asked you how you were. I never cared about your life beyond what you could do for me. I don't know what you do in your free time. I don't know if you have friends, hobbies, dreams. I just know that you are always there when I need you. Was there, Robert? Past tense. I know. We remained silent for several minutes. The wall clock ticked the seconds. I could hear the traffic outside, the children playing in the nearby park. Life went on outside, indifferent to this crucial moment between us. Mum, I didn't come to ask you to go back to the way things were. I came to apologize, and to tell you that I want to learn to be a better son, if you give me the chance. What does that mean to you, being a better son? It means respecting you. It means not borrowing money if I can't pay it back. It means inviting you to things without expecting you to work. It means calling you to ask how you are, not to ask for favors. It means valuing your time as much as I value mine. Those words sounded nice, but I had heard promises before. Promises that lasted weeks, maybe months, before everything went back to the way it was. Robert, I believe that in this moment you feel that way, but I need you to understand something. I am not going back to being the mother who was available 24/7. I am not going to loan money again that I cannot afford to lose. I am not going to sacrifice my peace for your convenience again. I understand. And if at any point you fall back into the old patterns, I will set boundaries again. And it won't be with an argument or with warnings. I will simply choose myself, like I did at the airport. He nodded, wiping away more tears. That's fair. More than fair. I want you to know something else. Robert, I love you. I will always love you. But loving doesn't mean destroying myself to save you. Loving doesn't mean disappearing so you can shine. I can love you and also love myself. And that's what I'm going to do from now on. I love you too, Mum. And I'm so sorry it took me so long to realize what I was doing. He got up from the sofa and slowly approached, asking permission. I hugged him. It wasn't like the hugs before, automatic and weightless. This hug had awareness. It had boundaries. It had respect. When he pulled away, he looked me in the eyes. Do you think you can ever fully forgive me? I already forgave you, Robert. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. It means I'm not going to carry the resentment, but I'm also not going to forget the lessons I learned. I understand. Now I need you to go. I need time to process this, to decide what I want our relationship to be like from here on out. Can I call you next week? Just to see how you are? You can, but if you call just to ask for something, I won't answer. I won't ask for anything, I promise. I walked him to the door. Before he left, he turned around one more time. Mum, thank you for not opening the door that day. It was the best thing you could have done for me. When he left, I closed the door and leaned against it. I cried, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation, of having said everything I needed to say, of having maintained my boundaries even when it hurt. Mary arrived an hour later. I told her about Robert's visit, about the conversation, about his tears and his promises. Do you believe him? I want to believe him, but I'm going to be cautious. I'm going to watch his actions, not just his words. That is wise, Laura. And in the meantime, you keep building your own life. Exactly. That night I painted a picture of a bird flying out of a cage. It wasn't subtle. I didn't pretend it was. It was my story, my liberation, my rebirth. The next 2 months were about reconstruction. Robert kept his word, at least at first. He called me once a week, always asking how I was, telling me about his life without asking for anything in return. The conversations were brief, sometimes awkward, but there was a genuine effort. Susan sent me a long message 3 weeks after Robert's visit. It was difficult to read because I wasn't used to her addressing me with anything close to humility. Laura, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything after how I treated you. I want you to know that I've been thinking a lot about what happened. Robert showed me the numbers, all the money we asked for, all the times we used you. I feel ashamed. I grew up in a family where mothers-in-law always helped, where that was normal. But now I understand there's a difference between helping and exploiting, and we exploited you. I'm sorry. I didn't respond immediately. I let the message sit for several days. Finally, I wrote her something simple. Thank you for acknowledging it, Susan. I appreciate your honesty. It wasn't a full forgiveness. It wasn't an invitation to go back to the way we were before. But it was an acknowledgement of her attempt. During that time, I continued to build my own life. I joined a book club at the neighborhood library. There were 8 of us women, all older, all with stories of having sacrificed too much for too long. We met every 2 weeks to talk about books, but inevitably we ended up talking about our lives, our children, our struggles. One of them, Evelyn, had a story similar to mine. Her daughter had used her as a free babysitter for years, until Evelyn simply moved to another city without telling her. They hadn't spoken in 2 years. Don't you miss your grandchildren? I asked her one day. Every day. But missing them isn't reason enough to go back to a situation that was killing me. Sometimes true love means walking away from the people you love. Her words made me think. I had been lucky. Robert had reacted. He had reflected. Not all of us had that luck. Some of us had to choose between our peace and our families, and both options hurt. I also started going to a small coffee shop on Tuesday afternoons. I would sit by the window with a book and a latte and simply enjoy being alone in public. I watched people go by, listened to fragments of other people's conversations, allowed myself to exist without purpose or obligation. One Tuesday, an elderly gentleman sat at the table next to mine. He must have been around 70, well-dressed, with a newspaper under his arm. He greeted me courteously and we started talking. His name was William. He was a widower, his children lived in another city, and he also came to the coffee shop every week, simply not to be alone in his house all the time. We talked for an hour about trivial things: the weather, the books we were reading, the neighborhood. It was refreshing to talk to someone who didn't need anything from me, who had no hidden agenda, who simply enjoyed the conversation. We became coffee friends. Every Tuesday we would meet without formally planning it, and we would talk. Sometimes about deep things, sometimes about nothing important. And I discovered that that was also valuable. Connections without weight, relationships without expectations. During this time, Robert continued to keep his word. He didn't ask for money, he didn't ask for favors, he just called, talked, and said goodbye. It was strange at first, almost uncomfortable. I kept waiting for the moment when he would ask for something. But weeks passed, and the request never came. In the 3rd month, he invited me to dinner at his house. He said that he and Susan wanted to cook for me, that they wanted me to see that they had learned to manage on their own. I accepted, but with caution. I told him I would go, but that I would leave early, that I wouldn't stay to clean or help, that it was just dinner. All right, Mum, just dinner. I arrived at their house on a Saturday night. Susan opened the door and for the first time since I had met her, greeted me with a genuine hug. Not forced, not automatic, genuine. Thanks for coming, Laura. The house was clean, not perfect, but clean. It was noticeable that they had done it themselves. The table was carefully set. There were flowers in the center, details that showed effort. Robert was in the kitchen, finishing the cooking. He proudly showed me the roasted turkey he had prepared, the mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole, all made by him. I learned by watching videos online. It's not like you're cooking, but it's edible. I smiled. It was the first real smile I had given him in months. The 3 of us sat down to dinner. The conversation was cautious at first, as if we were all walking on thin ice. But gradually it relaxed. They asked me about my book club, about my paintings, about my life, and for the first time, they listened to the answers. Not as a preamble to asking for something, but with genuine interest. After dinner, when I started clearing the dishes out of habit, Robert stopped me. No, Mum, you're the guest. Susan and I will take care of it. I watched them wash the dishes together, put things away, clean the kitchen. It wasn't perfect. They left some things out of place. But they did it, without asking for my help, without expecting me to finish what they started. When I left that night, Robert walked me to the door. Mum, I know we're still far from where we should be, but I want you to know that every day I'm trying to be better. And I understand if you can never fully trust me again. Robert, trust is built with consistent actions, not with pretty words. Keep doing what you're doing. In time, We'll see. I love you. I love you too, Mum. I drove back to my house feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time when it came to Robert. Hope. Not the naive hope that everything would be magically fixed, but the realistic hope that maybe, just maybe, we could build a healthy relationship based on mutual respect. But I also knew I wouldn't let my guard down completely. Old patterns have deep roots, and it would be easy for everyone to fall back into the roles from before. 6 months after the day I didn't get on that plane, my life was completely different. Not because of big, dramatic changes, but because of the accumulation of small, daily decisions to choose myself. I had finished 5 paintings. I hung them on the walls of my house, replacing old family photographs that only reminded me of times when I didn't exist as an individual, but as a function. Now my house reflected who I was, not just who I had been for others. The book club had become more than just books. It was my community. Those women knew me, valued me, respected me, and I did the same for them. We had created a space where we could all be ourselves without having to serve anyone. William and I still met on Tuesdays. Sometimes we would go for a walk in the park after coffee. It was a simple friendship, uncomplicated, without expectations. It reminded me that I could connect with new people, that my life didn't have to revolve solely around my family. Robert continued to keep his word. The weekly calls became more natural, less forced. He visited me once a month, always giving notice beforehand, always asking if it was a good time. He never arrived empty-handed. Small tokens that showed he was thinking of me, a book he thought I would like, flowers for my garden, my favorite pastry, and most importantly, he hadn't asked me for money again. One day he called me with something different in his voice. Nervousness, but also determination. Mum, I need to tell you something. Susan and I have been saving. We want to start paying you back the money we owe you. Robert, it's $18,000. It's going to take you years. I know. That's why we want to make monthly payments. $300 every month. It's not much, but it's what we can do without fail. And we're going to keep going until we pay you back every cent. I felt something loosen in my chest. It wasn't the money itself. It had never been just the money. It was the acknowledgement. It was the respect. It was understanding that I, too, had needs, that my well-being mattered. Robert, I appreciate the gesture, but I want you to know something. The money will help, of course, but what I really needed was for you to see me, to value me, and you are already doing that. Even so, we want to pay you back, Mum. It's the right thing to do. Then I accept. Thank you. The first payment arrived a week later, $300 deposited into my account with a note. First installment of many. I love you, Mum. I cried when I saw the transfer. Not because I desperately needed those $300, although they certainly helped. I cried because it meant that Robert finally understood, that actions mattered more than words, that real change required sacrifice and commitment. Susan also did her part. She invited me out to lunch, just the two of us. It was awkward at first. We had years of accumulated resentment between us. But she made the effort to listen, to ask, to get to know me as a person instead of seeing me as an extension of Robert. Laura, I know we'll never be best friends, and that's okay, but I want you to know that I respect you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that you deserved that respect from the beginning. It was enough. I didn't need us to be close. I just needed her to treat me with basic dignity. For my 66th birthday, Robert and Susan threw me a small party. They invited Mary, my book club friends, even William. They didn't assume I would cook or clean. They did everything. And the gift they gave me left me speechless. It was a travel package. 5 days at the beach at an all-inclusive resort, with all expenses paid. Just for me. Mum, this is the vacation you should have had from the beginning. A real vacation, where you only have to relax and enjoy. Mary already said she'll go with you if you want. I hugged them both, crying. They weren't tears of sadness or of lost years. They were tears of gratitude for this moment, for this change, for this second chance. I went on that trip with Mary 2 months later. They were the 5 most beautiful days I had had in decades. I slept late. I had breakfast in bed. I spent hours on the beach doing nothing but looking at the ocean. No one needed anything from me. No one expected me to serve, clean, or cook. I simply existed. And it was enough. One night, sitting on the terrace of my room watching the ocean, I thought about that day at the airport. The day I didn't get on the plane. The day everything changed. It had been terrifying to make that decision. It had meant breaking a lifetime of patterns. It had required confronting guilt, fear of abandonment, the possibility of losing my son forever. But by not getting on that plane, I had saved myself. I had given myself permission to exist as a complete person, not just as a serving mother. I had taught myself that setting limits wasn't selfishness, it was survival. And I had given Robert the opportunity to grow, to understand, to become a better person. If I had continued allowing the silent abuse, he would never have had a reason to change. Sometimes the deepest love we can give is to refuse to be destroyed by those we love. I returned from that trip refreshed. My house was clean and tidy because before I left, I had made sure to leave it that way, for myself. My garden was blooming, my paintings hung on the walls. My life, finally, was mine. Robert and Susan continued to pay faithfully every month. They continued making the effort to maintain a relationship based on respect. There were difficult moments, occasional relapses into old patterns, but now I had the strength to point them out immediately, and they had the humility to listen. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no perfect reconciliation or promises that there would never be problems again. But there was something better. There was honesty. There were clear boundaries. There was mutual respect. And there was peace. I learned that you can love someone deeply and still protect yourself from them when necessary. I learned that saying no is an act of self-love, not of selfishness. I learned that it's never too late to reclaim your life. That plane took off without me 6 months ago, and watching it rise into the clouds, I didn't feel loss. I felt liberation. Because sometimes, the only way to save a relationship is by letting it fall. And sometimes, the only way to show your love is by refusing to be consumed by it. I am 66 years old. I don't know how many years I have left. But I know this for certain. Every day I have left will be lived on my own terms, with my own boundaries, with my own dignity intact. And if someone cannot love me with respect, then I don't need that love in my life. Because I finally learned the most important lesson, that the love that destroys me is not love at all, and that the most important person I must care for, protect, and value is myself. That day at the airport, when the plane took off without me, I didn't abandon my family. I found myself. And that, in the end, was the best trip I could have ever taken.